I'm just like a dog. Humans and dogs are not that different. If you give somebody a treat for doing the right thing, and you do it enough, you'll train them to do the right thing. If you penalize them for doing the right thing, even if it's just a joke, over time, it becomes a penalty that they don't want to do. What happened? Did she stop doing that joke? Nope. Nope. Didn't stop doing the joke. And eventually it just killed my feelings. Let's talk about winning strategies versus losing strategies. And we'll get into the news, but let me work up to it this way. I may have told you this story or not, I don't know. But years ago, many years ago, I was in a relationship in which I would sometimes buy flowers for the woman I was with. I wasn't married at the time, but it was a long-term relationship. And I would give her just flowers for no reason. Now, I knew from prior conversations that it was more meaningful to her to give flowers when it wasn't, Valentine's Day or something. And so I would give her flowers, and she would say this: "Oh, what are you guilty for?" And we would laugh, because, it's sort of a standard joke. Ha ha ha, you must be guilty if you're giving flowers. Now, the first time I heard that, I thought to myself, I get it's just a joke, and I have a sense of humor. But I feel like I didn't get anything in return. I feel like I got, in a very small way, really trivial, but in a small way, I feel like I got punished for doing the right thing. Suddenly I have to explain what I'm guilty for? Like, that had nothing to do with anything. I was just literally trying to do something good. So the next time I brought her flowers, she said the same joke. And somewhere around the second or third time it happened, I said, "Look, I got to talk to you. Please don't say that. Please let me have some benefit for doing the thing you want me to do. Don't punish me for what you want more of, because you'll end up with less of it. I'm just like a dog. Humans and dogs are not that different. If you give somebody a treat for doing the right thing, and you do it enough, you'll train them to do the right thing. If you penalize them for doing the right thing, even if it's just a joke, over time, it becomes a penalty that they don't want to do." What happened? Did she stop doing that joke? Nope. Nope. Didn't stop doing the joke. And eventually it just killed my feelings. Honestly, it just killed my feelings. So I'm not saying that's the one reason that, things didn't last, but watch this technique in a lot of other bigger issues, all right? Let me give you some examples. Bill Maher was talking last night about how it's such a bad idea for the Democrats to be, let's say, running cover for looting. So a lot of people on the left are trying to make the case that the looting is just a property crime and it's appropriate within the larger context of how important the issue is, and you can't really get action until you've caused a little distress on the people who need to act. And so nobody loves looting, but it has its place. It fits within this world. It's okay. Don't worry too much about the looting, is what you're hearing from the Democrats. Now, given that people only hear from their own side, like Democrats listen to Democrats, Republicans hear from Republicans, for the most part, what happens to looting? You get more of it, right? Wouldn't you always get more of the thing you're getting complimented for? So the protesters are getting on TV. They're getting the fun of the protest. It looks like they have some community feeling. So they get good feelings from it. And then their team, the people who are not protesting, but rather the support structure for them, compliments them and basically rewards them for bad behavior. Now, if you reward people for bad behavior, what happens? You will, of course, get more bad behavior. Not sometimes, not, well, there's a risk of getting more bad behavior. No, I'm not saying there's a risk of it. I'm saying that 100% of the time, the thing you reward, you'll get more of. Doesn't matter if it's an animal, doesn't matter if it's a human, doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, doesn't matter if it's a Republican. If you're alive, like you can breathe and see the world, you respond to rewards and penalties. So let's take this to another level. The Palestinians reacted with unhappiness about the peace that's breaking out in the Middle East. All right? So take the concept that you'll get more of what you reward and less of what you penalize. So now Israel is working out deals for mutual benefit with neighboring Arab countries. What should be everybody's approach to that? Reward, right? Should President Trump not get a Nobel Peace Prize nomination? He should. He should. Would that make President Trump more likely to try even harder to get more peace in more places? Yes. Yes. Of course. If he had been penalized, President Trump, for working hard to get peace in the Middle East, would he keep going? Would he put as much resource and time into it if he just kept getting penalized for it? No. Because he's a human animal. It has nothing to do with his personality or character. You do more of what you're rewarded for, period. As soon as you think that doesn't apply, you're not part of the productive world anymore. You're off in imaginary land. Rewards and penalties work. So what did the Palestinian envoy to the Arab League, so what did he say about this deal with Israel and the UAE? He said, with all pride, Palestine wants a decision from the Arab foreign ministers, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes to this, quote, but Palestine was unable to impose that, in other words, the agreement they wanted people to agree to. So the draft resolution collapsed. And here's the key part. This is everything you need to know. He says, and remember, he's an envoy, so he can speak for the government. So he's not just a guy. He's speaking for the government. And he says, we have dignity, martyrs, prisoners, and refugee camps of glory, and this is enough for us. Oh my God. This is an official government person from the Palestinian people saying that their goal, what they want, in other words, that it's better to have these things, better than peace, better than prosperity, better than health, better than life, is these things. Dignity, martyrs, prisoners, and refugee camps of glory, and this is enough for us. All right, if this is your approach, can you predict how it will go? Yes, you can. There's a 100% chance that this approach leads to misery. There's no other opportunity for, talk about impossible. It's one thing to say something is, so unlikely it seems impossible. It's another thing to say you're doing everything you can to fail. I mean, if you made a list, I say, all right, let's make a list of all the things you shouldn't do if you want a better world for yourself and your people. What would be on the list? Well, how about punishing people when good things happen and rewarding bad behavior? Let's say somebody does a suicide attack. Yeah, we'll reward them for that. Yeah, their names will be famous, their family will be paid off. The Palestinians have literally reversed the lists. They're penalizing the good things and they're rewarding the bad things, and they're getting exactly the outcome that predicts. Exactly the outcome it predicts. What would they do if they wanted to reverse that? What would it look like? Here's what it would look like. Imagine the Palestinians said, we like the fact that peace is breaking out in some places. We're not getting what we want, and we're not releasing on it. We want some stuff, but we're happy that things are happening. Congratulations. Just think about that. So that would be a reward to Israel and to the other Arab countries. Now, Palestinians just hypothetically say, We're among the worst affected in many ways. And if peace is breaking out in all these places, why don't we just package this up and we'll be on board, but we also have a bunch of things we want. But you guys are doing a great job. And hey, if we can help you out, if we can help your part of the deal work, can you let us know how? We'll help your deal work. And then what happens? Then the entire Middle East says, well, we kind of like you guys. Thank you. Thank you for being positive. We didn't expect that, but thank you. And then the Palestinians say, you know what would make things even? I know we're never going to get the right of return exactly, but wouldn't it be okay if sometimes we could buy our way back in? So perhaps people who lost property could be compensated with reparations. They don't have to use that money to, let's say, buy property someday. I don't even know what's legal. Can they do that? Can they buy property? If you were a Palestinian and you had money, what would it take to buy property in Israel? And could you buy back, maybe not the same place you were displaced from, but could you buy back property in Israel if you wanted to, if you had the money? So suppose the Palestinians said, look, we're going to be as positive and helpful as we can be, but you know what would really make everything work? Would be a gigantic pot of money that's partly reparations and partly development that would make the Palestinian areas just super good. And it's a big number. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say how big the number is. But did I mention that we're being really helpful on all this other stuff? We're going to be helpful in every other way. We just want this big pile of money. It's kind of gigantic, but it would really solve this problem once and for all. Now, would any of that work? Probably not, because it's the Middle East. But my point is this. You don't have any chance if you're rewarding bad behavior and punishing good behavior. So in the long run, if that doesn't ever reverse, they'll always have the same outcome. Let's talk about Black Lives Matter doing basically the same thing. You know what I said with the riots and the looting, that's more. But look what, let me give you a mental experiment, sort of a thought experiment of what it would look like for Black Lives Matter, the group, the organization. We're not talking about the philosophy of it, just the organization. What would it take for them to be more effective? What would it take for them to reward good behavior and punish bad behavior? Well, what are they doing right now? Right now they're taking somebody who's accused of a sex crime, who resisted arrest, got shot. Nobody's in favor of that. But now that person will be a hero with their name on NFL helmets, apparently. Now, if you're Black Lives Matter, have you punished bad behavior or have you rewarded bad behavior? You know the answer. Black Lives Matter, right in front of you and as publicly as they possibly could, are rewarding bad behavior. They're actually making a hero and as somebody who certainly was at least half responsible for the outcome, the tragic outcome. You could argue that the police officers should have been smarter, better trained, should have handled it differently. Maybe. I don't know. I'm no expert. I wouldn't say that's true for sure, because if the guy was going for a knife, what can you do? But maybe. I'm open to the argument. Now, let's say if they'd reversed it. Imagine, if you will, and this is impossible to imagine, but just go with it for imagination. Imagine if, when the news came out that the guy who got shot 7 times had been resisting arrest and had been reaching for a weapon and had been credibly accused of some bad stuff. Suppose Black Lives Matter said, hold on, our first reaction was an overreaction. If we're being honest, we have a problem to fix, but let's be honest about it. He brought it on himself to some extent. 100%? Maybe not. Maybe the police have a part in this, right? Reasonable people could say, maybe there's 2 problems here, and you needed both of those problems to get the tragedy. If Black Lives Matter said some version of this, it looks like we've got to work on training our the people that we care about the most to be the safest and act the safest in these situations, what would that look like? That would be a reward. When the George Floyd thing happened, just about every white person in the world was already sold. When you saw the George Floyd video for the first time, no matter what you ever thought before, when you saw that thing, you said to yourself, okay, I get it now. That looks like bad police behavior. I don't believe this necessarily would have happened to a white guy. I don't know. But I haven't seen it, so I got questions. If at that moment, Black America had said, do you see what we mean? Look at the video. Do you see what we mean now? Can you help? Can we talk about some solutions? White America would have said, hell yes. Hell yes. Let's talk about some solutions. We don't want that. We don't want it to happen to you. We don't want it to happen to anybody. How do we have less of that? So that should have been the first reaction, and it would have been very productive. Here's what the reaction should have turned into when we learned that he died of a fentanyl overdose, or probably it was an opioid overdose. It could be that the police action exacerbated it. But it turns out that he may have been lying to them about whether he had anything. If he had told the truth, in other words, if he'd done his part, he probably would have been treated more like a medical problem and maybe even saved. But he did everything wrong, and the police may have done things wrong as well, and the combination was a bad thing. Here's what Black Lives Matter should have done if they wanted improvement. If they wanted it, they should have rewarded the right thing. And the moment they heard that he was drugged up, and that may have been a complicated issue, they should have pulled back. They should have pulled back. And they should have said to the police, I think we owe you an apology. You still might need to do something differently, and we're not happy with you, but it doesn't look like you murdered somebody. It doesn't look like a race murder. We don't know what this is, and we better get to the bottom of this, and we're not happy. But it wasn't what we first thought it was. If Black Lives Matter had said that, how would you, let's say you're not in the organization, how would you feel about that? That would completely change how I feel. Completely. I would say, oh, I get it. You're getting really worked up over things that look real, but as soon as you find out that maybe the story was different than you thought, you've now modified your opinion, just as you should. You rewarded people for doing right. You punished people for doing wrong. Yeah, I could work with that. I could work with that. But that's not what you're saying. There's some kind of need for self-destruction that's built into the Black Lives Matter movement. It's built into the Antifa, of course. Maybe Antifa is half the problem there. It's built into the Palestinian technique. Their way forward is they reward things that are in the wrong direction.